Oh, yeah, this is the way we do it. I now call representatives from Airservices Australia. Do you wish to make an opening statement?
No, Chair.
Getting even better, eh? Thanks, Chair. Look, I'll kick off. Welcome, gentlemen. Can you update the committee on the extent of the impact on air services of the COVID? So how has your funding been affected? Has it been lost? Has it been increased? I think I've already worked it out, but why don't I let you answer that, Mr Harfield?
Thank you, Senator. Jason Harfield, Chief Executive Officer. In broad terms, we have seen a 70 to 73% drop in revenue as compared to last year. That you could equate to being equivalent to the drop in air traffic. It's not exact, but it is comparable. And that has meant we've had to make significant adaptation in the organisation to continue to provide services with that reduction in revenue. We have been fortunate to receive some government funding to take us through to the 30th of June next year. Which would mean that we've seen overall would be still a drop of about 20% on our revenue.
So, Mr Harfield, sorry to jump in, but let's put that in real terms, real dollars, real cents, because it is the taxpayers' money. So how much has the government stumped up to assist air services between now and June 30th of next year?
If I take it from February this year through to the 30th of June will be the equivalent of $850 million.
850 mil. All right, now you touched on, okay, that's that, but you touched on you need to make some adjustments, and when scary that is, what are those adjustments?
So we've had to, as you're well aware, Senator, we are totally industry funded and need to continue to match our services to the industry that we serve. Despite the fact that we've seen, let's call it an equivalent of about a 75% drop in traffic, there is still traffic operating. So we've had to reposition our operations to ensure that there is a level of resilience in the operation, because we didn't want to get into a stage where a controller or a firefighter got infected with COVID and we'd actually have to stop providing services. So we've moved in accordance to readjust our operations that way. We've made sure that we're in a position to be able to respond to any recovery that occurs as when it occurs. But it does mean that we have also had to reduce our costs in the last financial year, and I'll get Mr Logan to go into more detail. It was $30 million for last financial year we found in savings. This year we're looking for at least $85 million worth of savings.
So sorry, let's just get to the pointy end. How many jobs lost? Where were they lost? Are they not lost? Are they on JobKeeper?
Senator, we're not entitled to JobKeeper because we're a government agency.
Right.
And so that has been the area that we've been focused on. We are conducting a voluntary redundancy program within our contract management ranks at this stage.
Contract management?
Contract managers.
So what's the difference between the normal manager and a contract manager?
Contract managers, they're not enterprise agreement staff.
Oh, okay.
On contracts.
I've had that real weird empty look on my face then, didn't I? Okay, that explains it.
When we appeared before this committee at the end of August, I did talk about that we are considering and looking at potential of a voluntary redundancy program with our enterprise agreement staff. Yep. However, we haven't made any commitment to that, as we also have obligations for consultation, etc., and need to look ahead to understand how the industry is going to shape over time. But I have said and publicly stated is that in the long run, probably in about 3 years' time from our projections, when we see a return to traffic, probably only about 80% of what we previously had pre-COVID, we will be a smaller organisation.
Okay, so of the contract managers, how many are we looking at? Have they come forward yet, or is the VR, the expression of VR still open? You're waiting for numbers?
That is continued, but there are 30 that have put their hand up so far.
So far, and that would be just a drop in the ocean at this stage, I suppose. Overall, the overall numbers of your operation, as you've quite rightfully said, a lot smaller.
Depending, I mean, it's one of the things that in going forward, we're not quite sure how things will evolve, and so what we're trying to manage at this stage is sort of, I call it 3 sort of horizons. Continue to provide services now, be in a position to be able to respond, not knowing how quick it will respond and that, etc., and then reposition ourselves in the longer term for a very different industry that we had pre-COVID.
All right, so help me out here. How would you say 850 million government assistance at this stage from February to June 30th next year, is that to cover the wages of all the people that were employed prior to the COVID hitting, before the government shut down the industry?
So that maintains the organisation at about 20% less than what we would normally operate at.
Is that 20% less people, 20% less
20%
wages,
less revenue. So in other words, we would get just over $1 billion worth of revenue a year. We're on 800 million now.
I know, I remember you used to get just over $1 billion, but help me out here. So no one's gone yet, no one's been made redundant, or have you axed stopped employing casuals? How have you?
So initially,
what have you cut?
I'll get Mr. Logan to go into a bit more granular on a number of the cost and savings initiatives we've done so far. But immediately when COVID hit, we did look at what temporary contractors that we had in being, and sort of dealt with those to, and then looked at reassigning some of our, call it full-time employees to do work and to ensure that we remain productive to try and preserve the workforce as long as we possibly can.
I don't want to sound harsh or cold, but I understand if there's contractors and all of a sudden the work dries up, we know what happens. In terms of full-time employees or part-time employees or casual employees who wear the Airservices shirt in whatever role they were doing, have we lost any of them?
So the only reductions that we have had due to COVID is the 30 contract managers taking voluntary redundancy.
So they've gone, they've taken the redundancy?
They're going at the moment.
Yeah. So. Okay, all right, no worries. Okay, so, and of course, how long's a piece of string? We don't know what's going on, understand when flights start coming up, and who knows, you're still going to need your firefighters, you're still going to need your air traffic controllers. Even Mr. Sharp from the Red Wine Brigade's going to have a few planes flying around in and out more than he had before. Just ignore that, because I still think he could sell ice to Eskimos. I know you like him, I just found him a little bit slippery. Anyway, that shouldn't even come into it. So, now, what's the current status of the service in terms of the firefighters? Mr. Harfield, they're all still there?
Yes, they are, Senator.
Okay, and just all hanging on. So in terms of the VRs, where's your next move with the VRs after the contract managers?
Senator, as explained, and as I mentioned previously, and I am on also the public record of saying, is that we are examining the potential for voluntary redundancy with our enterprise agreement staff that could potentially include firefighters. However, there is work to be done before we do, because we have to gauge how many firefighters that we actually need, what the shape of the industry is, etc., before you could, because there's no point in reducing and allowing voluntary redundancies for firefighters and then finding that we can't respond accordingly. Well,
Mr. Harfield, you and I have gone down this path and others on a number of occasions over the years, particularly as we just completed an inquiry not long ago. But this is where I'm heading to. But if a plane decides to blow up or crash land or whatever, it doesn't matter how many flights are in and out that airport that day, we still need our firefighters sitting in the station waiting.
Correct, and we have not reduced, we have not removed any firefighting service for any of the aerodromes that we're currently at.
Good, so help me out there, because last time we met there was some, the Chief Fire Officer, I remember, was sitting at the table under a Senate inquiry, and we were talking about some numbers. There was no hardcore decisions being made, but there was some talk around, can we do it with less? Wasn't there?
So that was the thing about looking at what the staffing levels should be versus the category. And one of the and a recommendation that came out of that inquiry was about the task resource analysis, which would then define what is the staffing levels that are required for the various categories of airport, taking on.
Because we were having a little bit of a dust up in Brisbane, if I remember rightly, on what would be the right numbers and perceived by ICAO, I think it was, and what
correct. And so that methodology, so that methodology has progressed a little. Probably is not as far as we'd like. I think it got a little bit interrupted with COVID, etc. However, the methodology was trialled in 2019, and it was agreed even with the United Firefighters Union in late 2019, agreed on that methodology, and we're starting to now go through and review the staffing levels associated with the various category, which depends on the type of area.
My memory's not that great, but I remember there was a little bit of concern around if someone had a heart attack and needed a defibrillator in the terminal, as opposed to, oh my God, we've got a drummer on the tarmac.
Yeah, so it was about making sure that we had the right to respond accordingly to various activities that could happen on the aerodrome.
Okay, so are you happy with the firefighter numbers that we have now in all our airports?
Happy with the numbers that we have today.
Yep.
We still have not determined what we know, because we haven't completed that task resource analysis for all the fire stations as yet.
Okay. So I'm right here, there's no firefighters have departed the business. They're still all the same.
We haven't reduced based around the what we were talking about during the inquiry at all. In fact, we've increased by 7 during COVID.
Oh, that's great. Okay, tremendous.